Captain Elena Vasquez slammed her fist on the console, the holographic display flickering under the impact as alarms blared across the bridge. "All hands, battle stations!" Her voice cut through the chaos like a knife, steady despite the knot twisting in her gut. They fired on the outpost, confirming missile signatures now. The Orion Arm Accord was supposed to hold. Article 7 forbade strikes on neutral zones, but the Krell fleet had just turned that scrap of paper to ash. Beside her, Lieutenant Marcus Hale hunched over his tactical station, fingers flying across the interface. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his jaw set firm. Always the rock in a storm, the one who cracked jokes to keep morale from crumbling. "Signatures match Krell heavy cruisers, ma'am. 3 of them closing fast. Our sensors show they've breached the outer perimeter. Outposts gone dark." Elena nodded, her mind racing through protocols she'd drilled 100 times in Sims. The bridge crew, barely a dozen strong on this frontier picket ship, the UNS Vanguard, moved with practiced urgency. Sparks from a shorting panel lit the dim red lighting, casting long shadows on faces etched with grim determination. She was the captain, bold and unyielding, but this wasn't a drill. The Krell, those tentacled overlords who'd pushed humanity to the brink a decade ago, had crossed the line. And now the extinction clause loomed like a guillotine. "Comms, hail them!" Elena ordered, striding to the central holotank where the sector map pulsed with incoming threats. The Krell armada blinked red, a swarm blotting out the stars. "Demand they stand down." Reference Article 7. The comms officer, young Ensign Kira Novak, witty under fire, quick with a quip to diffuse tension, tapped her headset. "Hailing now, Captain, but their response is static. They're jamming us." Marcus glanced up, his eyes meeting Elena's. Jamming means intent. They're not talking. They're committing. "We invoke Clause 12? Elena's breath caught. Clause 12 of the Accord. The Extinction Protocol, humanity's nuclear option. It authorized total war if the ceasefire shattered, unleashing experimental weapons, rallying every colony, turning the galaxy into a graveyard if needed. No half measures. She'd sworn oaths to uphold peace, but the cost of hesitation was extinction for her crew, her people. The outpost's last transmission echoed in her mind, screams cut short by plasma fire. "Prepare the invocation packet," she said finally, her voice low but resolute. "Encrypt it to Sol Command and all allied outposts. If they broke Article 7, we end this." Kira's fingers hesitated. "Captain, it's everything. Billions could die. And billions more if we don't," Elena replied, turning back to the viewport. The Krell ships loomed larger, their bioluminescent hulls pulsing like predators in the void. A shudder ran through the Vanguard as the first shockwave from the outpost's destruction hit. Marcus activated the emergency drives, the ship groaning as inertial dampers kicked in. "Evasive maneuvers. Torpedoes armed. But they're faster. We'll take hits." The bridge lights dimmed under another alert. Incoming fire. Elena gripped the rail, watching tracers streak toward them. This was it, the spark that could ignite the stars. The alarms wailed as the first torpedo slammed into the Vanguard shields, a bone-rattling jolt that sent sparks flying from the console. Elena braced against the command rail, her eyes locked on the tactical display where red icons swarmed like angry hornets. The Krell fleet had closed the gap faster than projected, their biomechanical ships weaving through the debris of the shattered outpost with eerie precision. "Shields at 70%, Marcus barked from the helm, his hands a blur over the controls. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his voice stayed steady. The voice of a man who'd pulled them out of worse. "I've got us on a spiral evasive, buying time, but not much. They're locking on with plasma lances." Kira's face was pale under the flickering emergency lights, her fingers dancing across the comms panel. "Sol Command's acknowledging the encryption, Captain. But response time, it'll be hours. We're on our own until then." She glanced up, her cautious nature cracking through in the way her lips pressed thin. What if this clause really means what it says? Extinction? We've never tested it. Elena didn't look away from the viewport. The Krell vessels glowed with that unnatural inner light, veins of energy pulsing along their hulls like the arteries of some vast living beast. Article 7 had been the fragile thread holding the galaxy together. No orbital strikes on neutral stations, no escalation to planetary glassing. The Krell had snapped it with that single deliberate barrage, vaporizing the outpost and everyone inside. Humanity's response. Clause 12, buried in the ceasefire accords. Total war, no holds barred, until one side blinked out. We invoke it because we have to, Elena said, her tone clipped earnest. She straightened, forcing calm into her limbs. Marcus, divert power from life support to forward arrays. Kira, hail the nearest allied relay, warn the colonies. If we're lighting the fuse, they need to know. The ship bucked again, another hit glancing off the port side. Alarms blared louder, red warnings flashing. Hull integrity compromised in Section 3. Marcus grunted, twisting the ship into a tighter roll. Power rerouted. But Captain, that's gonna leave us breathing shallow. And they're adapting, look at the patterns. Those bastards learn mid-fight. Through the chaos, Elena spotted it. The lead Krell cruiser adjusting its formation, tendrils of sensor webs extending like probing claws. They'd broken the treaty not just with firepower but with intent, testing humanity's resolve, probing for weakness after years of uneasy peace. The cost was already tallied. The outpost's crew, friends, and diplomats reduced to floating ash. If they didn't push back now, the Krell would roll over Sol's borders like a tide. Adapt or die, Elena muttered, echoing the old Academy creed. She activated the ship-wide comm. All hands, this is the captain. Battle stations. We're not running, we're hitting back. Make it count. Kira hesitated, then nodded, her wit surfacing in a wry half-smile. Aye, Captain. Just promise me we're not going down without making them regret it. The Vanguard surged forward, engines flaring blue against the black. Elena watched as their first volley of railgun slugs streaked out, punching into the nearest Krell escort. The impact bloomed like a flower of fire, shearing off a limb-like appendage that drifted away in the void. For a heartbeat, triumph flickered. But then the Krell retaliated, their plasma arcs curving impossibly to track the ship's maneuvers. Brace! Marcus yelled. The bridge shuddered violently, lights cutting to emergency red. Elena's world tilted, consoles sparking as secondary explosions rocked the deck below. Kira stumbled, catching herself on the rail while Marcus fought the controls like a man wrestling a storm. Section 3's breached, Kira reported, voice tight. Casualties. Engineering's reporting 3 down. We can't take another like that. Elena's mind raced, grit pushing past the fear. The Krell were faster, their biotech letting them regenerate mid-battle. But humans had something they didn't. Sheer, stubborn improvisation. Marcus, vent the auxiliary tanks, create a debris cloud. It'll mask our signature. He didn't question it, fingers flying. Explosive bolts fired, spewing coolant and scrap into space in a glittering haze. The Krell sensors faltered, their locks breaking for precious seconds. Elena seized the moment. Target the lead ship's nexus point, that glowing core amidships. Full barrage. Railguns thrummed to life again, slugs tearing through the cloud. The lead cruiser convulsed, its hull splitting in a spray of organic fluid that froze instantly in the vacuum. It listed, engines flickering out, but the rest of the fleet pressed on, undeterred. Not enough, Marcus growled, wiping blood from a cut above his eye. They're splitting us off from the jump lane. If we don't break through, we're trapped here. The stakes clawed higher, not just the ship but the claws itself. Invoking extinction meant committing everything. Fleets mobilizing, colonies arming, the fragile alliances fracturing under the weight. One wrong move and humanity became the aggressor in the galaxy's eyes. Kira patched through a fragmented signal from the colonies. Captain Relay confirms Krell signatures massing near Epsilon Eridani. They're not stopping at the outpost. Elena's jaw set. No speeches, no dramatics, just action. Then we make them bleed here. Reroute us through the debris field. Use it as cover. The Vanguard dove into the wreckage, hull scraping against twisted metal. Shards pinged off the shields like hail, but it bought them space. Elena's heart pounded, the air growing thinner. The alarms wailed as oxygen reserves dipped below critical. Red lights pulsing across the bridge like a frantic heartbeat. Elena gripped the armrests, her knuckles white, forcing calm into her voice. Engineering status on the breach? A voice crackled back, laced with static. Jax, her chief engineer. The one with the perpetual grease stain on his cheek and a laugh that could cut through panic. Hull's holding cap, but that debris nicked the secondary scrubbers. We're venting atmosphere faster than we can recycle. Give me 10 minutes to jury-rig the backups, 10 minutes. In the debris field, that was an eternity. The Krell signatures blinked on the tactical display, closing in like wolves scenting blood. Their cruisers, sleek and predatory, sliced through the wreckage with ease, weapons hot. Kira swiveled in her chair, her fingers flying over the console. She was the cautious one, always double-checking scans before sounding off. Her dark eyes sharp behind the glow of the screens. They're splitting formation. 2 flanking us from the port side, the 3rd hanging back. Looks like they're probing for weak points. Elena nodded, mind racing through vectors. The Vanguard shuddered as another chunk of debris grazed the shields, sparks dancing along the viewport. No time for retreat. Invoking the extinction clause meant standing ground, or the colonies would pay the price. Helm, evasive pattern Delta 7. Keep us in the thick of it. Let the junk obscure their sensors. The ship lurched, thrusters firing in a jagged rhythm that pressed Elena back into her seat. Metal groaned under the strain, but they weaved deeper into the graveyard of the old outpost, shattered hulks drifting like forgotten bones. A Krell beam lanced out, missing by meters, vaporizing a nearby wreck in a bloom of fire. Shields at 60%, Kira reported, her voice steady but tight. If they get a clean shot, they won't. Elena cut in, unstrapping herself. She needed eyes on the fray. Crossing to the secondary console, she pulled up the external feeds. The debris field a chaotic swirl of shadows and glints, the Krell ships glowing like embers in the void. Jax's voice broke through again, breathless. Cap, bad news, the rig's not sealing. We need to isolate the damage section, but that means cutting life support to the cargo bays. Non-essential crew evac to the forward holds. Non-essential. That hit like a gut punch. The cargo bays housed the raw recruits from the outer rims. Kids barely out of sim training, their faces still soft with hope. Elena's jaw clenched. Do it. But get a team down there first, make sure no one's left behind. Kira glanced up, hesitation flickering. Captain, that's a risk. If the Krell board us, then we fight from inside. Elena met her gaze, the weight of command settling heavier. The air tasted metallic now, thinner with every breath, a reminder of how fragile their bubble was. She keyed the intercom. All hands, this is the captain. We're in the fire now. Hold your posts, trust your crew. We invoked the clause not for glory but survival. Make it count. The response came in fragments. Affirmatives from stations. A muffled cheer from below decks. Jax was already moving, his team scrambling through access tubes, tools clanging. A new alert pierced the din, proximity warning. The flanking Krell ships had adjusted, their beams carving paths through the debris, forcing the Vanguard to twist sharply. The ship bucked, inertial dampeners whining, and Elena braced as a console sparked nearby. Direct hit on the starboard nacelle, Kira shouted. Maneuverability down 15%. The tactical hologram flickered, showing the noose tightening. The 3rd Krell cruiser accelerated, its weapons array charging for a killing blow. Elena's mind flashed to the colonies, Epsilon Eridani lighting up with invasion signatures. If they fell here, the claws became a hollow threat. Humanity's last stand reduced to echoes. Engineering, how much time? She demanded. 5 minutes tops. Jax grunted, the sound of welding torches hissing in the background. But if they hit us again, we're done. Elena scanned the field, eyes narrowing on a cluster of larger wrecks. Remnants of the old human freighters, their frames twisted but solid. An idea sparked, raw and desperate. Kira, can we magnetize the hull? Pull some of that debris into a screen. Kira paused, calculating. Possible, but it'd drain the shields further. We might buy a minute, no more. Better than nothing. Elena slammed the command. Do it. Helm, plot a course straight through that cluster, full burn. The Vanguard surged forward, hull humming as magnetic fields engaged. Chunks of metal, doors, struts, engine casings clanged against the shields, forming an impromptu barrier that rattled like a storm. The Krell fire splashed harmlessly against the improvised armor, beams scattering in wild refractions. For a heartbeat, silence reigned on the bridge, broken only by the labored breathing of the crew. The air grew colder, frost edging the edges of the consoles. Then Jax's voice, triumphant amid the strain. Sealed. Life support stabilizing, redirecting now. Relief washed through Elena, but it was short-lived. The Krell ships regrouped, their formation unbroken, closing the gap with relentless precision. The debris screen wouldn't hold forever. Kira's console beeped urgently. Incoming transmission from the Krell lead. They're demanding surrender, citing the clause as unlawful aggression. Elena's laugh was bitter, sharp. Tell them the clause is law because they broke it first. No quarter. As the transmission cut off, the Krell's response came not in words, but in a fresh salvo of plasma lances that lit the void like vengeful stars. Elena gripped the armrests of her command chair, the ship's frame shuddering under the impacts. The debris field they'd cobbled together from shattered hull fragments and spent munitions held, for now, but cracks spiderwebbed across the makeshift barrier, venting puffs of ionized gas. "Jax, reroute auxiliary power to the forward shields," Elena ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline clawing at her throat. "Kira, plot an evasion vector." "We can't slug it out here. There are too many." Jax's fingers flew over his panel, sweat beading on his forehead. "Power diverted, Captain. But the core's overheating, another hit like that, and we'll lose integrity across the board." He was the steady one, the engineer who'd jury-rigged half the ship's defenses from scrap, his cautious nature shining through in every precise adjustment. Kira, ever the witty firebrand, shot back without looking up. "Evasion? With this bucket listing like a drunk? I've got a course, but it'll take us straight into their crossfire. Unless you want me to slingshot us around that gas giant. Risky, but it might buy us time." Her hands danced across the nav console, pulling up holographic projections that flickered with incoming trajectories. Elena weighed it, eyes locked on the main view screen where the Krell Armada loomed, their sleek biomechanical hulls pulsing with bioluminescent veins. The ceasefire they'd shattered wasn't just a treaty. It was the fragile thread holding the galaxy from unraveling. Article 7 forbade first strikes on colony worlds, but the Krell had glassed 3 human outposts in a single night, their tendril-like ships descending like biblical plagues. Humanity's response? Invoke Extinction Clause 12. Total war, no holds barred. But out here, outnumbered 5-1, it felt less like invocation and more like desperation. "Do it," Elena said finally. "Slingshot. And hail the fleet remnants, see if anyone's close enough to link up." The ship groaned as Kira punched the engines, thrusters firing in stuttering bursts. Alarms wailed, red lights painting the bridge in bloody hues. A Krell beam grazed their flank, shearing off a sensor array in a burst of sparks. Elena tasted copper, blood from where she'd bitten her lip. "Damage report," she snapped. Jax patched it through. "Outer hull breached on decks 4 and 7. Sealing bulkheads, but we've got hull rats, Krell boarding drones in the vents." His face paled, but he didn't falter, activating countermeasures with a grim nod. Kira whooped as they swung into the gas giant's gravitational pull, the massive orange orb filling the viewport. "Hold on. This is gonna get bumpy." The ship bucked, artificial gravity straining as they skimmed the upper atmosphere, heat shields glowing cherry red. In the chaos, Elena's mind raced. The claws gave them license for anything. Viral payloads, EMP bursts, even ramming tactics. But the Krell adapted fast, their biotech evolving mid-battle. They'd need something they couldn't predict. Human grit, maybe. Or just raw stupid luck. A new ping lit Kira's screen. "Captain, incoming friendly." "It's the valiant Captain Reyes's ship. They're flanking from the asteroid belt." Relief flickered, but Elena quashed it. One ally wouldn't turn the tide. Patch them through. "And Jax, prep the drone countermeasures. If those bugs get to engineering, we're done." The transmission crackled open, Rhea's voice cutting through static, laced with exhaustion. "Elena, you look like hell. We're drawing 2 off your tail, make it count." "We will," she replied, a fierce smile breaking through. "Form up and hit their lead ship. Target the Nexus pod. Disrupt their hive link." As the Valiant surged into view, its cannons blazing, the bridge erupted in coordinated frenzy. Jack sealed the last breach, drones sparking and dying in the corridors beyond. Kira fine-tuned their arc, pulling away from the giant's pull just as Krell pursuers overshot, tangled in turbulent storms. But the lead Krell vessel adjusted, its tendrils extending like probing fingers, locking tractor beams onto the human's formation. Elena's console lit with warnings, energy drain, systems flickering. "They're pulling us in," Jax warned, voice tight. "Not today," Elena growled. She slammed the override, diverting everything to weapons. "Fire everything. Show them what Clause 12 really means." The barrage hit like a storm of retribution, Valiant's forward lances carving glowing scars across the lead Krell ship's hull. Tendrils writhed in response, coiling back as if burned. But the tractor lock held firm, dragging the human formation closer into the behemoth's maw. Elena gripped the command rail, her knuckles white, watching the energy readouts plummet. Shields at 30%, engines straining against the pull. Jax, reroute auxiliary power to the disruptors, she barked, eyes never leaving the viewport where the Krell vessel loomed, its pod cluster nexus pulsing with bioluminescent fury. We need to sever that link before they swarm us. Jax nodded from his station, fingers flying over the patched console. Sparks still danced from earlier breaches, but he'd jury-rigged the drones into a makeshift barrier, buying them seconds. On it, but it's like punching a mountain. Their hive minds adapting already. He slammed the activation key and a pulse of electromagnetic fury lanced out, aimed at the nexus. For a heartbeat, the tendrils spasmed, the tractor beam flickering. Kira twisted in her pilot's harness, sweat beading on her brow as she wrestled the controls. They're flanking. 2 corvettes breaking off to cut us from the flank. Her voice cut sharp through the alarms. The ship bucking as she evaded a plasma arc that scorched past the hull. The stars wheeled wildly outside, the gravitational storm's eddies pulling at them like invisible hands. Elena assessed the tactical overlay in a glance. The Krell lead ship was the key, but losing the wing now meant annihilation. Hold formation, pilots. Kira, take us into the debris field, use the wrecks for cover. It was a gamble. The shattered hulks from their initial skirmish floated like jagged islands in the void. Remnants of ceasefire violations long ignored, but it beat open exposure. The valiant Dove, engines roaring defiance weaving through twisted metal that pinged off the shields. Jax's disruptor pulse connected again, this time eliciting a visible shudder from the Krell giant. Segments of its hull peeled back, venting atmosphere in eerie silence. Hit, their coordinations dropping, the wings hesitating. But victory soured fast. A tendril snagged the port nacelle, yanking the ship sideways into a spin. Consoles erupted in red alerts. Structural integrity warnings blared as bulkheads groaned. Elena was thrown against her harness, tasting blood from a split lip. Compensate. Kira, trying. Kira's hands blurred on the yoke, firing retros to counter the torque. The spin slowed, but not before a corvette closed in, its pods unleashing a volley of seeker drones. They bloomed like deadly flowers, homing on the Valiant's weak points. Jax abandoned his station in a blur, grabbing a portable welder from the toolkit. Breach incoming, I'll seal it from the access tube. He was gone before Elena could protest, vanishing into the flickering corridor lights. Status on the Nexus? Helena demanded, slamming a fist on the comm to rally the wing. All ships, focus fire, break their hold. The wing responded in staccato bursts, lasers stitching the void. One corvette erupted in a silent fireball, debris scattering like confetti. But the lead ship's tendrils multiplied, adapting, lashing out to ensnare another human frigate. Screams echoed over the open channel as it crumpled, hull breaching in a cascade of escaping air. Kira's voice cracked with strain. We're clear of the debris, but they're reeling us back in. Engines at max, we can't outpull them forever. Elena's mind raced, the weight of Clause 12 pressing like a vice. Invoking extinction meant no mercy, no retreat. But it also meant every loss was on them, humanity's grit against the swarm. She spotted it then, a weak seam in the Krell hull, exposed from Jax's earlier hit, venting exotic particles that interfered with their own beams. Target that fissure, she ordered, voice steady as iron. Overload the lances, pour everything into it. Kira, align us for a ramming vector if it comes to that. The pilot's eyes widened, but she adjusted without question. The ship surging forward. The wing fell in behind, a wedge of light against the dark Leviathan. Jax's voice crackled over the internal comm, breathless. Sealed the breach, but they're boarding through the vents. Drones incoming! Elena drew her sidearm, a compact pulse pistol, and nodded to the security team mobilizing at the bridge hatch. Hold them off. We're ending this. The lances fired as one, a spear of raw energy plunging into the fissure. The Krell ship convulsed, its nexus pod shattering in a bloom of fractured light. Tendrils went limp, the tractor beam dying with a final futile twitch. But as the formation broke free, tumbling into safer void, Elena saw the cost. 2 human ships adrift, silent hulks now, crews lost to the vacuum. The wing reformed, battered but intact, while the Krell remnants scattered into the storm's heart. Jax stumbled back onto the bridge, face smeared with soot, a makeshift bandage on his arm. We got 'em, but their hives fracturing, more will come. Elena holstered her weapon, staring at the fading glow of the Nexus. Let them. Clause 12's just getting started. Elena gripped the armrest of her command chair, the bridge humming with the low thrum of emergency repairs. Alarms had quieted, but the air still carried the acrid tang of scorched circuits. Jack slumped against a console, his bandage already darkening with fresh blood, while Mira, the ship's wiry engineer, patched a flickering holodisplay with quick, precise welds. Status on the wing? Elena asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Mira didn't look up. 2 birds down for good, the rest are limping back to the carrier. Krell signatures fading into the nebula. They're pulling back, but not far. Jax pushed off the console, wincing. Fractured hive means chaos. Their queenships will rally whatever's left. We hit one nexus. They've got dozens. Elena nodded, pulling up the treaty overlay on her tack screen. Ceasefire Article 7 stared back in cold legalese. No offensive actions within neutral space. The Krell had shattered it first, dragging her formation into that trap. Now humanity's response, Extinction Clause 12, unlocked the old protocols. Total war, no mercy, no reconstruction. Invoke it officially, she said. Transmit to command coordinates, timestamps, casualty logs. Tell them we're prosecuting. Jax's eyes narrowed. You sure? Clause 12's a ghost. Hasn't been dusted off since the Orion incursion. Earth's councils will hesitate. They broke the peace. We end the threat. Elena's fingers danced over the controls, sealing the message. It burst away in a tight beam pulse, carrying the weight of lost crews. Mira finished her weld, the display stabilizing to show a web of Krell vectors snaking through the storm. Incoming chatter from the remnants. They're calling for reinforcements, big ones. If we sit here, we're bait. Elena stood pacing the narrow bridge. The void outside pressed in, stars smeared by ionized clouds. Her mind raced through options. Evade and regroup or press the advantage while the hive reeled. Caution whispered retreat. Grit demanded pursuit. Jax watched her silent, his usual quips buried under fatigue. Helm, plot an intercept course, she decided. Flank speed. We don't let them regroup. Jax straightened. That's suicide. Our shields are at 30%. Better than waiting for their armada. Elena met his gaze. You saw what they did to the Valiant. We owe those crews. He hesitated, then keyed in the override. Aye, but if this goes south, it's on you. The ship groaned as engines flared, surging toward the nebula's edge. Mira monitored the strain, muttering adjustments. Tension coiled in the air, broken only by the ping of incoming data. Krell signals multiplying like shadows. Hours blurred into a tense hunt. Sensors pinged a lone Krell scout veering to intercept. Elena ordered a skirmish pod launched. Drones rigged with scavenged lances, human ingenuity turning scrap into fangs. Fire on my mark, she said, timing the shot. The pod streaked out, slamming into the scout's flank. It erupted in a silent fireball, debris scattering like confetti. But the victory was short. Alarms wailed as 3 more signatures emerged from the clouds, larger, coordinated. Queenship escorts, Mira warned. They're locking tractors, Elena braced. Evasive pattern delta. Jax manned the point defense. He dashed to the station, firing bursts that shredded incoming missiles. The bridge shook, sparks flying from a hit. Elena's plan teetered. Push too hard and they'd join the adrift hulks. Divert power to forward shields, she barked. Improvise, adapt. A human edge. Overload the engines for a micro-jump, slingshotting past the blockade. Mira's hands flew. Risky could fry the core. Do it. The ship lurched, reality blurring in a wrench of acceleration. They burst through, leaving the escorts grasping at empty space. Cheers erupted, short and fierce. But as they cleared the nebula, Elena spotted the cost on sensors. The skirmish pod, silent now, its crew unrecoverable. Jax returned, face grim. Close one, he said. She stared at the stars. It'll get closer. But we're not done. Elena gripped the armrests, the hum of the engines a steady pulse beneath her boots. The nebula's glow faded on the view screen, replaced by the stark void dotted with distant stars. Status report, she said, voice cutting through the lingering adrenaline. Mira wiped sweat from her brow, fingers still dancing over the console. Engines holding at 80%. That micro-jump scorched the relays, but we're stable. For now. Jack slumped into a chair, his flight suit smeared with coolant residue. Sensors show the blockades regrouping. They've got reinforcements inbound. 3 cruisers, heavy armaments. ETA, 20 minutes. The words hung heavy. Elena's mind raced. The mission was clear. Deliver the invocation packet to the neutral relay station at Epsilon Verge. Article 7 of the Ceasefire Accord had been shattered when the Krell fleet glassed the outer colonies. Humanity's response? Invoke Clause 12, the Extinction Protocol. No mercy, no negotiations. Totalva. But getting there meant threading the needle through Krell patrols. One wrong move and the packet burned unread. Options? Elena asked, eyes on the tactical display. Red icons swarmed like angry wasps. Mira leaned forward. We can't outrun them. Shields are patchwork after the skirmish, but the asteroid field ahead dense, uncharted. If we skim the edge, use the debris for cover. Jack shook his head. Too risky. Their scanners pierce that junk. We'd be sitting ducks. Elena studied the map, tracing the field's jagged outline. Humans didn't win by playing safe. No, we go in deep. Mira, plot a slingshot through the core. Use the gravity wells to mask our signature. Mira's eyes widened. That's suicide. The field's a grinder, collisions every second. One hit and we're vapor. Do it, Elena said. Or we die out here anyway. The ship banked hard, thrusters firing in controlled bursts. Alarms blared as they plunged into the field, rocks the size of shuttles tumbling in lazy orbits. Jax took the helm, hands steady despite the sweat beading on his neck. Holding course. Impact in 10. Elena felt the deck vibrate, a low groan echoing through the hull. A boulder glanced off the port side, shearing away an antenna in a spray of sparks. The view screen flickered, static washing over the stars. Shields at 40, Mira called. Diverting auxiliary power. Another jolt, closer this time. Elena braced as consoles rattled. Keep us tight. Weave the lanes. Jax's jaw clenched. Got a big one dead ahead. Evading now! The ship twisted, engines screaming. They slipped past by meters, the rock's shadow eclipsing the bridge lights for a heartbeat. Silence followed, broken only by heavy breaths. Then the sensors pinged. Krell signatures, they're following, Jack said. 2 cruisers in pursuit. Elena's fist tightened. The plan was working, but barely. The field bought time, not safety. Arm the decoys. Launch on my mark. Mira nodded, prepping the pods. Small drones, rigged with false emissions to mimic their drive signature. Primitive but effective, human trickery at its finest. Mark, Elena ordered. The decoys burst free, streaking into the debris. The cruisers veered, lasers lancing out at phantoms. One pod detonated early, a bloom of fire that lit the field like a false dawn. But the second cruiser adjusted, closing the gap. A missile lock screamed through the speakers. Incoming! Jax yelled. Elena didn't hesitate. Evasive pattern delta, Mira, overcharged the disruptor field. The engineer hesitated a fraction. It'll blind our own sensors, too. That's the point. The ship shuddered as the missile streaked past, deflected by the improvised pulse. Darkness swallowed the bridge, consoles dark, view screen blank. Only emergency lights glowed red. Blind flying, Jax muttered. Here goes nothing. He piloted by feel, the ship's yaw and pitch his only guides. Minutes stretched, the hull protesting every dodge. A crunch echoed, something clipped the aft section. Damage report? Elena demanded. Mira patched in manually. Cargo bay breached. Packets secure, but we're venting atmosphere. The cruiser's engines thrummed closer, their outlines ghostly in the returning sensor feed. One fired a broadside, beams carving through asteroids in lethal arcs. Jack spun the ship using a spinning rock as a shield. Fragments peppered the hull like hail. They're gaining. We need an out. Elena's gaze locked on the field's heart, a massive progenitor asteroid laced with unstable isotopes. There, the core. Jax aimed for the crevasse. Mira, ready the grapples. Understanding dawned. You're insane, Mira breathed. But yeah. The ship dove, the crevasse yawning like a wound. Grapples fired, latching onto the rock's surface. They rode the spin, centrifugal force slinging them around the behemoth. The lead cruiser followed, too eager. It grazed the edge and ignited the isotopes. A chain reaction erupted, the asteroid fracturing in a cascade of plasma. The blast wave hit, tossing their ship like a leaf. Alarms wailed. Jax fought the controls, stabilizing just as the view screen cleared. Behind them, the cruiser was gone, vaporized. The second one retreated, scorched and limping. Cheers broke, ragged and real. But Elena's eyes scanned the readouts. The grapples had torn free, structural integrity down to 30%, and the packet's casing showed microfractures. We made it through, Jack said, slumping back. Elena wiped sweat from her brow, the bridge lights flickering like a heartbeat on the fritz. Made it, yeah, but look at this. She tapped the console, pulling up the schematics. The packet's containment field pulsed erratically, hairline cracks spiderwebbing across its outer shell like veins under strain. One wrong jolt and whatever data or ordnance it held could spill out, poisoning the ship or worse, alerting every sensor in the sector. Jack straightened, his grin fading as he leaned over her shoulder. The cheers from the crew died to murmurs. How bad? Can we patch it? Bad enough. The isotopes from that blast must have resonated through the hull. We're leaking trace radiation. Nothing lethal yet, but it'll fry the nav systems in hours if we don't seal it. Elena's fingers flew across the keys, rerouting power from non-essentials. Lights dimmed further. The hum of the engine softened to a growl. From the engineering station, Mira, sharp-eyed and ever the pragmatist, chimed in without looking up. Forget patching. We need a hard vacuum seal, and our EVA suits are down 2 from the spin-out. Plus that limping cruiser. It's not running. It's calling friends. Jax paced the narrow bridge, boots thudding against the grated floor. The view screen showed the asteroid field's debris clouding like smoke from a fresh wound. The enemy ship, a distant spark, veering toward the system's edge. Ceasefire Article 7 be damned, they'd broken it first, glassing a colony outpost. Now with the packet's invocation code for Extinction Clause 12 in their hands, humanity's last stand hinged on getting this bird to the relay station intact. Failure meant glassed worlds, starting with Earth. Options, Jack said, voice steady but edged. We can't outrun them damaged. Dock at the nearest rock for repairs. Elena shook her head. Too exposed. Scans show patrols inbound. 3 signatures closing fast. Our best shot's the nebula fringe, 2 hours out. Magnetic interference could mask us, buy time to improvise a fix. Mira snorted, soldering a loose panel with a hiss of sparks. Improvise with what? We're down to spittin' prayers. That packet's our ticket to flipping the script on those tentacled bastards. Show 'em humans don't fold. The ship shuddered as a micrometeor pinged the hull, a reminder of the field's unforgiving drift. Jack stopped pacing, eyes narrowing on the tactical overlay. The nebula wasn't just cover. Its ionized gases could supercharge their makeshift repairs if they jury-rigged the auxiliary thrusters right. Risky. Push too hard and the engine core might cascade like that cruiser. Helm to nebula, full burn, he ordered. Elena, isolate the packet in the cargo bay. Mira, grab Riley and strip the medbay shielding. We'll use it to reinforce the casing. No heroics, just grit. Engines roared back to life, the ship lurching forward into the void's embrace. Elena nodded, already moving, her caution yielding to the fire in Jax's resolve. But as she passed him, she murmured, If it breaches mid-jump, we're ghosts. You know that. Jax met her gaze, unflinching. Then we haunt them all the way to the core worlds. The nebula loomed on the view screen, a swirling cauldron of violet and gold, tendrils reaching like fingers to pull them in. Alarms quieted to a tense whisper, but the readouts painted no illusions. Structural stress climbing, enemy signatures sharpening. Riley joined Mira in the corridors below, their tools clanging in rhythmic urgency, human hands turning scrap into salvation. Halfway through the burn, the first patrol cruiser broke from the cloud, weapons hot and locking on. Jax yanked the evasive yoke, the ship corkscrewing through a debris stream. Lasers streaked past, one grazing the wing. Sparks erupted from a console, Elena diving to smother the flames with a fire suppressor. Shields at 15%, she shouted, voice raw. Mira's voice crackled over comms. Packet stable for now. Shielding's holding, but the nebula's interference is scrambling our signals. They can't get a clean lock. The second patrol joined the fray, a pincer move tightening. Jack spotted it. A rogue asteroid tumbling lazy in the field's heart, its shadow a fleeting blind spot. All hands, brace! We're slingshotting that rock. Use its gravity to flip their trajectory. He punched the thrusters, the ship groaning as centrifugal force whipped them around the boulder. G-forces pinned them to seats. Riley's curse echoed from below. The lead enemy followed, too aggressive, just like before, its hull scraping the asteroid's edge. No isotopes this time, but the impact was brutal. Shrapnel bloomed, shredding the cruiser's flank. It spun wild, colliding with its wingman in a fireball that lit the void. The third veered off, damaged but alive, broadcasting distress like a siren's wail. Jax eased them into the nebula's outer haze, the colors washing over the hull in eerie waves. Silence fell, broken only by the creak of settling metal. Elena exhaled, checking the packet. Cracks contained for now. But the cost lingered. One engine offline, crew bruised, and that last cruiser limping toward reinforcements. The relay station was still a day's burn away through denser storms. We bought time, Jack said, slumping into his chair. The nebula's glow cast long shadows, a temporary veil over the war they'd reignited. Mira patched in from engineering. Time's all we need. Humans built empires on less. But Elena's scan lingered on the fading. Elena gripped the console edge, her knuckles whitening as the scan painted the void in stark reds and blues. The enemy cruiser's signature flickered like a dying star. Damaged, yes, but veering toward the nebula's heart where their fleet lurked. One wrong drift and they'd light up like a beacon. "Jax, that thing's not dead," she said, voice steady despite the knot in her gut. "It's calling home. We've got maybe 6 hours before company arrives." Jack straightened in the pilot's seat, his face etched with the grime of the last skirmish. He rubbed his jaw, eyes narrowing at the holographic display blooming between them. "Then we don't wait for the storm to clear. Punch us through the relay's shortcut, ripples and all." Mira's voice crackled over the intercom from below decks, laced with the hum of straining tools. "You're kidding. That path's a graveyard for bigger ships. Our hull's already singing from those hits. We adapt or we die out here." Jack shot back, fingers dancing over the controls. The ship groaned in response, thrusters firing in short, defiant bursts. Humans didn't claw to the stars by playing safe. The nebula swallowed them whole, tendrils of gas coiling like living smoke against the viewport. Elena monitored the strain gauges, each spike a reminder of their fragility. A lone corvette against an armada that had broken the ceasefire first. Article 7 was dust now. Humanity's invocation of Clause 12 meant no mercy, no surrender. But invoking extinction? That was a vow carved in their bones. A line crossed only when the alternative was erasure. Alarms blared as the first ripple hit, a gravitational shear from the relay's unstable core. The deck tilted violently, tossing loose panels like shrapnel. Elena braced, shouting, "Compensate port side! We're shearing off course!" Jax wrestled the yoke, sweat beading on his brow. On it, rerouting auxiliary power. The ship bucked, engines whining in protest, but he coaxed her back inch by brutal inch. Mira patched in auxiliary stabilizers from engineering, her curses a rhythmic counterpoint to the chaos. "Pushing her limits, Captain. One more like that and we're scrap." Through the haze, the relay station emerged, a skeletal spire of human alloy, defiant amid the cosmic storm. Its lights pulsed weakly, a hail of automated defenses scanning their approach. Elena keyed the auth codes, her heart pounding. If the station's AI recognized them as friendlies, they'd have a shot at broadcasting the proof, footage of the cruiser's Article 7 violation, the spark that justified Clause 12. But the scan from the fading enemy vessel had done its work. Distant signatures bloomed on the edge of detection. 4 interceptors closing fast, their formation tight and predatory. "They're here," Elena whispered, the words tasting like ash. Jax's grin was feral, all grit and no fear. "Good. Let's show them what extinction looks like up close." The corvette surged forward, weapons hot as the relay's docking arms extended like welcoming claws. Mira sealed the bulkheads below, her voice calm now. "Docking in 30. Make it count." Blasts lit the void behind them, the interceptors firing warning shots that grazed the nebula's edge. Elena targeted the lead ship, her shots precise, born of endless drills. One hull breach and the chain reaction would buy them seconds. The station loomed larger, its comms array a promise of amplification. If they could uplink the data, irrefutable evidence of the breach, every human outpost from Sol to the Fringe would rally. Clause 12 wasn't just words. It was the fire that forged their survival. Jax banked hard, evading a plasma arc that scorched their shields. Elena, lock and load the packet. "Mira, prep the breach protocols if we have to fight from inside." Affirmatives snapped back, the crew moving as one. The first interceptor closed, its guns blazing, but Jax rolled them under its belly. A human maneuver no alien tactician predicted. Ingenuity, raw and unyielding. Impact shuddered through the frame as they clamped to the station, airlocks hissing in sync. Alarms wailed, enemies inbound. But Elena hit transmit, the data streaming into the relay's core. "We've got it out," she said, exhaling. Outside the battle raged, their small ship a thorn in the swarm. But the signal spread, a ripple becoming a wave carrying humanity's defiance to the stars. Jax twisted the throttle. the ship's engines groaning as they pulled away from the relay station's jagged hull. Sparks trailed from their port side where an interceptor had grazed them, but the data packet was away. Humanity's unfiltered truth blasting across the galactic net. Elena slumped in her harness, fingers still hovering over the console, her face pale under the red emergency lights. "It's propagating," she murmured, voice raw. "Every node in the sector will have it in minutes." Mira punched a fist into her palm, her cautious eyes alight for once. "Breach teams are holding the airlock, but those Krell bastards are massing for a counterboarding. Jax, we need to jump now." "Not yet." Jax's jaw set, brave resolve etched in the lines of his face. He glanced at the tactical display where a swarm of alien fighters looped in pursuit, their formations too precise, too relentless. The ceasefire was shattered, Article 7 in tatters. The Krell had fired first on civilian outposts, claiming human expansion as provocation. But humanity's response? Invocation of Extinction Clause 12, the ancient pact that let the underdogs unleash hell if survival hung by a thread. No more diplomacy. This was total war, and their little corvette was the spark. Alarms blared anew as a Krell dreadnought loomed on sensors, its shadow eclipsing the stars. "Incoming salvo," Mira warned, her witty edge dulled by fatigue. "They're locking railguns. We can't outrun that." Elena straightened, her ingenuity kicking in like a second heartbeat. She yanked a panel open, exposing a nest of flickering conduits. "Reroute auxiliary power to the grav shield. It'll buy us seconds, but if I crosswire the plasma vents—" "Do it," Jax ordered, banking sharply to throw off the targeting. The ship shuddered, inertial dampers whining. Outside, the void erupted in blue fire. Krell torpedoes streaking past, one clipping their aft stabilizer. Metal screamed and Mira cursed, sealing a hull breach with a quick dispense foam pack. The grav shield flared to life, a shimmering bubble that deflected the next barrage. Elena's hands blurred over the jury-rigged lines, sweat beading on her brow. "Holding, but it's frying the relays. One more hit and we're driftwood." Jax's mind raced, human grit fueling the impossible. The dreadnought closed, its maw of weapons hungry. No alien fleet planned for this. A lone human ship crewed by 3 who'd stared down worse odds on frontier runs. "Mira, sync the decoy drones to mimic our signature." "Elena, when I say, vent the plasma straight at their sensor array. Blind the big one." Mira nodded, her fingers flying across the auxiliary board. Drones ejected in a puff, scattering like startled birds, drawing fire. The dreadnought's guns thundered, shredding 2 in brilliant bursts. Jax rolled the corvette inverted, thrusters firing in a corkscrew that no Krell pilot would dare. Too reckless, too human. "Now!" Elena triggered the vents. Superheated plasma lanced out, not as a weapon but an improvised flare slamming into the dreadnought's forward sensors. Blinding light washed the bridge and the alien ship's fire stuttered, locks breaking. Jax punched the jump drive. Stars stretched into lines as they warped away, the swarm falling behind. But the cost lingered. A flickering console warned of cascading failures, their ship limping toward the rally point. In the sudden quiet, Mira exhaled. That was too close. Clause 12's invoked. The fleet's mobilizing. But if the Krell trace that packet, they won't, Jax said, voice steady. Not in time. Humanity's fire spread, unquenchable. The bridge lights flickered like dying stars as the Indomitable shuddered through the nebula's edge. Jax gripped the armrests, his knuckles white against the worn synth leather, while Elena scanned the tactical overlay, her fingers dancing over holographic controls. Mira stood at the viewport, arms crossed, her breath fogging the reinforced glass in shallow bursts. "They're adapting," Elena muttered, her voice cutting through the hum of straining engines. "Krell signatures on our tail, 3 cruisers closing fast. That flare bought us minutes, not hours." Jax nodded, eyes locked on the forward display. The rally point loomed ahead, a debris field from the old war, now humanity's staging ground. But the packet they'd stolen from the dreadnought pulsed in the comms array, a digital bomb of evidence proving the Krell's ceasefire violation. Article 7 shattered, Clause 12 awakened. Extinction authorized. If they delivered it, the fleet would ignite. A proximity alarm wailed. Mira spun. "Evasive pattern Delta, now." Elena complied, the ship banking hard into the nebula's violet haze. Ion storms crackled outside, painting the hull in electric blues. But the Krell weren't deterred. Their formations tightened, plasma lances probing the clouds like predatory tongues. "Shields at 60%, Jax reported, rerouting power from life support." The air grew stale, recyclers whining in protest. We push through or we die scattered. Mira's jaw set, her cautious nature yielding to the fire in her gut. She'd always been the planner, mapping risks like a cartographer of doom. But Jax's grit pulled her forward, Elena's wit sharpening the edges. Then we improvise. Vent the auxiliary plasma again. Target their lead cruiser's engines. Make it look like a malfunction on their end. Elena hesitated, brow furrowing. That could overload our core. We're already limping. Do it, Jax ordered, his voice a low rumble of unyielding resolve. No speeches, just the weight of survival pressing them together. The Indomitable twisted, thrusters flaring in a human corkscrew that made the Krell hesitate. Their rigid geometries couldn't match the chaos. Elena triggered the vents. Superheated exhaust spewed sideways, igniting a chain of nebula gases into a blinding cascade. The lead cruiser veered, its engines stuttering as false readings flooded their systems, courtesy of the hacked packet's subroutine. Got him! Mira whooped, a rare crack in her composure. The cruiser listed, colliding with its wingmen in a bloom of debris. But victory soured fast. A second Krell vessel locked on, its beam slicing through the haze. The ship bucked, alarms screaming as hull integrity dropped. Sparks erupted from a console, singeing Jax's sleeve. He slapped it out, cursing under his breath. Direct hit to the jump coil, Elena said, her wit turning grim. We're blind in here, no clean warp. Mira paced, mind racing. The debris field was close, a graveyard of twisted metal from the last ceasefire's edge. Use it. Slingshot us in, gravity assist from the wrecks, hide among the ghosts. Jax plotted the course, the ship groaning as it accelerated. Nebular tendrils whipped past, the Krell's fire grazing their flanks. One lance pierced the shields, venting atmosphere in a hiss that clawed at their ears. Elena sealed the breach, but not before the cold bit deep. They plunged into the field, the Indomitable weaving through colossal hulks, remnants of human defiance, now shields for the living. The Krell pursued, but the maze slowed them, their massive forms scraping against salvage. In the dim glow of emergency lights, Jax patched the packet's final transmission. Fleet Command, this is Indomitable. Ceasefire broken. Article 7 violated. Invoking Clause 12, coordinates enclosed. Static crackled, then a voice. Admiral Reyes, steel in every syllable. Received. Hold position. The fire comes. Mira exhaled, leaning against the bulkhead. The cost mounted, engines failing, crew exhausted. But the claws burned brighter now. Humanity's unquenchable spark ready to consume the stars. The Krell closed in, their shadows eclipsing the wrecks. But in the heart of the graveyard, the trap was set. Jax's fingers flew across the jury-rigged console, rerouting the last scraps of power from the Indomitable's dying core. The ship groaned around them, a behemoth adrift in the skeletal remains of its fleet, every bulkhead vibrating with the thunder of approaching Krell dreadnoughts. Mira stood at his shoulder, her breath steady despite the sweat beading on her brow, handing him tools without a word, her caution now a quiet anchor in the storm. They're locking weapons, she said, eyes flicking to the flickering holoscreen. The Krell armada loomed, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with bioluminescent veins, blotting out the stars like a living eclipse. Probes had already breached the outer wrecks, tendrils snaking through the debris to test for traps. Jax nodded, slamming the final panel shut. Traps live. Just need them closer. His voice carried that gritty resolve, the kind forged in 100 skirmishes. But his hands betrayed a tremor, crew down to skeletons, air recyclers wheezing, and the clause's invocation hanging like a guillotine. Article 7 shattered meant no mercy. Clause 12 unleashed everything humanity had buried in the black. Admiral Reyes's transmission cut through the static again, her tone unyielding. Indomitable status. We're inbound, but your window's closing. Draw them in. Copy that, Jax replied, keying the mic. Feeding false signatures now, looks like we're easy pickings. He triggered the decoys. Phantom engine flares blooming amid the hulks, luring the Krell vanguard deeper into the graveyard's embrace. Mira gripped the railing as the deck shuddered. A Krell corvette punched through a derelict frigate, its boarding claws raking metal like flesh. Alarms wailed, proximity breach. They're boarding the outer ring, she warned, pulling her pulse rifle from the rack. Her movements were precise, no wasted motion. The cautious engineer turning warrior when the line blurred. Jax grabbed his own weapon, falling in beside her. Hold the bridge. I'll sink the charges. They moved as one, boots-pounding corridors lit by sputtering reds, the air thick with ozone and fear. Outside, the Krell's roar built, a symphony of destruction, their ships disgorging swarms of armored horrors into the void. In the engine bay, Jax crouched amid tangled conduits, linking the final detonators to the Indomitable's warp core. It wasn't elegant. Humanity's ingenuity rarely was. Overloaded reactors from a dozen wrecks, chained to a single pulse. Enough to vaporize the Krell fleet if they clustered right. But one misfire and they'd take themselves out too. A klaxon pierced the hum. Boarders inbound, deck 5. Mira's voice crackled over the comm. Jax, they're through. I can hold, but do it, he barked, sealing the link. He sprinted back, rifle hot in his grip, arriving as the first Krell breached the inner hatch. Towering, chitin-plated brutes with energy lances, they surged forward, ignoring the sting of human fire. Mira picked off the lead one, her shot cracking its carapace, but another swatted her aside, sending her skidding across the deck. Rage ignited. Jax charged, unloading a burst into the beast's joints, toppling it. He hauled Mira up, her side bloodied but eyes fierce. Plan B, she gasped, nodding to the emergency vents. Together they funneled the boarders into a killbox corridor, sealing it behind them and venting atmosphere. Krell lungs faltered in vacuum, their forms convulsing against the bulkhead viewports. But the dreadnoughts pressed on, tractors latching onto the Indomitable, reeling it in like prey. The holoscreen showed the trap's jaws closing. Krell ships tangled in the debris web, signatures converging. Rhea's voice broke through. Now Indomitable, light them up. Jax hit the trigger. The warp cores ignited in chain reaction, a cascade of white-hot fury erupting from the graveyard's heart. Blasts rippled outward, shearing Krell hulls, turning behemoths to slag. The Indomitable bucked, shields failing, secondary explosions rocking their frame as shrapnel pelted the hull. Mira slumped against him, clutching her wound. Did we get them? The screens cleared to stars unmarred by enemy shadows. Silence fell, broken only by the ship's dying sighs. Jax met her gaze, the cost etched in every scar. Engines gone, half the fleet's ghosts avenged. But Claws 12's fire now burned unchecked across the sector. Humanity endured,